What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy D2 HBCU football in the morning time. Well, afternoon to some, morning time to others. Trying something new. Um, Everybody be competing for those afternoon spots. So decided let's try to go in the morning. Give me just a second, pull some up here. Try to get this thing rolling. I don't like that resolution, but it is what it is. I bet. So look, it's a lot of D2 shows out there. Hope y'all got a chance to check some of them out. If you hadn't, go check them out. D2 HBCU Game Day. They dropped their first episode of their show yesterday. Who else dropped their show? HBCU Game Day dropped their SIAC preview show yesterday. So that's real big. Over there with Jamie and Sly. Also check out Kelly Flicks, man. There's a lot of good content out there surrounding D2 football. Go ahead and add to the stage. Jump right in. I am buying the Savannah State stock. And I would suggest anybody who want to take anything to do with SIAC football to buy the Savannah State stock. Now, on them other shows, they disagreed. Them boys disagreed real bad, especially Sly, Jamie. I'm gonna let y'all hear some of their conversations about Savannah State. But I'm here to go on record. Kendrick is buying the Savannah State stock today. If I had to label this season would be called You Don't Know, right? People talk about how the SIAC is wide open. I think, honestly, man, the SIAC is just in a interesting place. You look at the rosters have been updated, still guys coming through. Man, it's a lot of talent that's in the SIAC. It's a lot of new talent in the SIAC. The SIAC lost so much talent these last few years with the transfer portal, but it feels like this season the coaches really went after it. The coaches really, except maybe two schools, and we'll get into that. But, it's a lot of talent up and down the conference. I don't think there will be an undefeated team in conference play this particular year, just because it's so many unknowns and there's so many places, and I feel like all these teams have some weak point, but just the sheer talent. Like, I think coaching in this conference this year is going to be a premium. If you have a good coach, this is the time to have one. You got a coach that you this might not be the season that you want to have that type of guy in your corner. Let's do something else here. All right, let's get into it. Why I'm buying the Savannah State stock. Simple. The defensive line. And I'll tell anybody who might disagree, go cut on the tape from them guys. They have, in my opinion, the most experienced defensive line in this conference. They have the most complete defensive line, from your tackle position to your end position. I just think this set of guys, I think it's going to be big for Savannah State. And when you look and contrast that to the other teams in the conference, their offensive line, everybody's young pretty much on the offensive line. Everybody's going to be starting at least one or two true freshmen on the offensive line this season. I think this defensive line is just going to be hell for a lot of teams to handle, which brings me to this point. Savannah State, they get left out of this defensive talk all the time. Ask Savannah State and Central State. They kind of get left out. But when you look at their defense, so this is the Russian defense for the conference. They're third, man. And you look at what they did last season. They were able to beat Clark Atlanta. They were able to beat Albany State, which we consistently say were the best offenses in the conference, right? We consistently say that Clark Atlanta has this lethal offense and Albany State has this lethal offense. And then we kind of throw out the bathwater with Albany State. However, I meant the bathwater with Savannah State. However, man, Savannah State was in a lot of games. They had a few head-scratching losses, but they were in a lot of games. And so I'm rocking with Savannah State. You look at what they got coming back compared to what they had last year. Defensively, they're stacked. On last night's episode when it aired, I know Sly has this opinion because there's 7 quarterbacks on the roster for Savannah State, right? And Sly saying if you got that many quarterbacks, you don't have one. Well, I'm here to tell you that Christian Burks is the starter going into he's QB1 at Savannah State. Mind you, there's 6 other guys on that roster. There's 2 or 3 of those guys that I really think can get the job done if Burks does not get the job, does not handle the job. But I think it's a little bit easier for him this year. I think he has some weapons now. They've always had weapons on the outside, the wide receiver. They had a stacked wide receiver room. But this year, adding Gilbert, the transfer from Georgia, which, I mean, he was pretty dominant in the SEC. I really don't see anybody stopping Gilbert in this conference. So I'm looking for Savannah State. The question mark for me for Savannah State is, can that offense get going, right? Can that offense produce? And I think that's the $1 million question. And at this point, I'm riding with Savannah State. I'm riding with their, just the whole team. And if you look at their schedule, I think their schedule is right? And let's see what Jamie and Sly had Savannah State pick. Now, Jamie had Savannah State pick 4. Sly had them pick 6. I think Savannah State ends up around 3. To me, it's either championship or bust, right? I know we throw that term out all the time. It's either championship or bust for Savannah State, in my opinion. I think up and down, they're just the better talented team. Like they don't have the most continuity because that would belong to Albany State. But talent-wise, in the trenches, it's Savannah State. And this game is ultimately won in the trenches. Like last night, and Sly's in here, I know last night Sly said that Benedict is going to have the best defense. I disagree with that. I disagree. I think Benedict defense will be good. Benedict added some pieces. They got Zelly Aldrich that was at Tuskegee that transferred to Alcorn. He's now up there. They got Cam Williams up there. But, yeah, that's good on the back end side. But I just think on the defensive line, holistically as a collective defensive line, Savannah State is just better, right? And even if you look at last year, let's look at some comparison on when you really think this through. This is what they did to Clark Atlanta last year. That Savannah State, no, this is Albany State. Let me go back. This is what they did to Clark Atlanta. One of the more prolific offenses in this conference. Now, I know some people say, well, Clark Atlanta didn't really have a run game. Ask Tuskegee about Clark Atlanta's run game. Yeah, it showed up in bits and in moments last season. But They held him to 27 yards on the ground. He went David Wright went 28 for 43 for 201 yards. But once again, the question for Savannah State is on the offensive side of the ball. Can they win on the offense? Like any game that they lost, you have to kind of like lean on the offense. Now they had that one letdown with Fort Valley where Fort Valley just blowed them out. Yeah, that one was pretty rough, but just up and down, man. I gotta buy the Savannah State stock. I just gotta buy that Savannah State stock. I'm sold on Savannah State. So if I had to pick my preseason rankings, I'm gonna side more with Jamie, but I'm gonna slide Tuskegee out of there and I'm gonna put Savannah State at 3. If I had to post my rankings, Savannah State would be at 3. So we'll see. You know, it's up to Nick. It's up to Nick. And Nick is my guy. You know, it's up to you, my guy. Can you lead the offense? I feel like you got more weapons now than you have, where you have more tools on the offensive side of the ball to use, because I don't think we've seen a tight end. I mean, we've seen good tight ends in this conference. We've seen Abner that was at Miles last year. There was a guy at Morehouse a few years back, man. He was a low, and that was like the year that Morehouse beat Tuskegee for the first time in a long time, and that guy kind of killed us. And then there's Alex Hinton that was at Fort Valley. I think he's still at Fort Valley. Then you got Gentry Sparks that's now at Albany State, which just makes that Albany State offense a whole lot better. Man, it's just one of those things where I think personally Savannah State just has it, just top to bottom. And I will be honest and say that this is, my opinion, the year of the underdogs in this conference. I know we have Albany State and Clark Atlanta high. I have Albany State high too. Clark Atlanta, yeah. I don't have Clark Atlanta at 2. We'll say that. I got them 5. I got them 5, to be honest, because they could score a lot of points last year. My biggest question for Clark Atlanta is on the defensive side of the ball. It's on that defense. Can Clark Atlanta, when they have down days, right? Now, I do believe that the offense is going to be more lethal at Clark Atlanta this year than last year, because I feel like Zai brings another component to Clark Atlanta that you got to account for. And maybe he might not have the turnover bug the way that David Wright had the turnover bug. However, there's still question marks on the defense. Have they upgraded the defense? Yes. Linebackers, some transfers at that linebacker position. I've heard that they've gotten bigger on the defensive line. We will see. They open up with a real big test in Valdosta State. So we're just going to see how that lines up, right? But ultimately, it comes down to this. It's going to come down to this quarterback play in the conference. And in my opinion, what makes me a little hesitant about Albany State, because yes, we have Isaiah Knowles, but then in those games when it's not really his day, do they have a second guy that can step up? You look across the conference, there are second guys, and me and Sly, we disagree on this. Sly, my dad believes this too. If you have a bunch of quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. And I'm like, if you look at the span of the conference and how the conference is going, you better have 2 guys. You better have 2 guys on that roster that is not a fall off. And part of the reason is I believe we play so many Division I schools that takes a toll on us. You look at Miles and playing when they get dinged up. You got one quarterback, you tend to get in trouble. I think that's been Fort Valley's problem for a couple of years, because when Durham gets dinged up, who is that next guy that you can put in the game to step up? So you need two quarterbacks, and you see a lot of schools in this conference have gone to this understanding, right? I'm not saying run a two quarterback system. I believe you have to have your guy. You have to have a QB1. That's your guy, but you need another guy on that roster that makes that room better, that challenges that first-hand dude, and that you can put in the game, and it won't be a serious drop down. You see that with Kentucky State. Kentucky State is another team that I don't think we've given enough credit to. They finished the season they won 5 out of 6, right? They won 5 out of 6. Now, Sly said the schools at SIC win when they have one clear-cut guy. I made it different because a couple of guys played for Miles last year, right? Cam is sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. Even when Miles was contending and could have won a championship the year before, you had Cam, even when they had Klein Peter, when they were still good, when they were really where they should have went, they just went to Albany State and laid an egg. Cam and Klein Peter, they split those opportunities. Now, Benedict is a story in itself because what did Benedict have? Benedict had a massive offensive line that was just better than anybody. You look at that 2017 team, they're Tuskegee. The last time they won the SIC, it wasn't one clear-cut guy. They won multiple. Miles has consistently played multiple quarterbacks in their years that they won. Even the year that Gabe won at quarterback at Albany State, they played multiple quarterbacks because you need a guy that can come behind the guy that you currently have. Does it always work? No, I feel like it definitely does not work when you have that teeter-totter thing, kind of like what Tuskegee did last year with Bill and Christopher Roberson. Like, I didn't like that. You play one series, another one series. I don't like a guy not getting to the feel of the game. I felt like early on this season that Bill was the guy. This year, shout out to Keisha at Black College Experience. She interviewed Aaron James. Aaron James kind of changed his tone a little bit. He was in the topic talking about, he believed in that two quarterback system last year. But on her show, he kind of praised Bill and he was excited. So I think Bill is probably going to be the number one guy. But in that same breath, there's a new guy on Tuskegee's roster, Mike Franklin, who they signed last year, but didn't really show up on the roster, but he's on it this year. I think he's a guy that if Bill does not get the job down or goes down hurt, there's not that major drop-off. Now, back to the Kentucky State conversation. Yes, Kentucky State, Denham Johnson is there. I think he's going to be great. Won 5 out of the last 6. I think they really had a shot. They should have beat Tuskegee down there. I've said it on multiple shows. Then they go and they bring in the kid from Langston. Okay. Now, it's my belief that Denham is going to be QB1. But when you look at the kid from Langston, there's not going to be much drop-off because what has Kentucky State had a problem with? When Denham goes down in this season, there's really nobody that can step in to be his second. So I like the idea of these teams bringing in another quarterback. Same thing down there at Edward Waters. They brought in Noah from Southern. They gave him number 1. It's hard for me to believe if they gave him one that he's not going to be QB1. But Dent is still on the roster. Dent played a lot of games for them. Won some games for him last season. Not much drop-off between if Noah goes out. I think these quarterbacks can still run these systems because we've seen teams whole season go down the drain when they lose their top guy. Same thing at Allen, the transfer they bought into Allen. I think this mute is going to be their starting guy, but they have another guy. And I cannot knock them for doing that, for bringing in another guy to make that room better because we've consistently seen teams that could make a play for the SIAC fail because QB1 goes down. So I just think that's the nature of the game, especially playing all these Division I games. Look at Miles. Miles plays Alabama State, Morgan State, 2 FCS programs that are powerhouse defensively, right? Like when we talk about Morgan State, we think defense. We think about Alabama State, we think defense. Now, I don't think that Miles should be playing either one of those schools, right? I don't think they should. However, Miles has experienced that. Miles has lost some SIAC championships because when they go play Alabama State in that first game, they get down to their third, fourth quarterback because they're injured. The offensive line and the defensive line in those particular games, sometimes it does not necessarily match up. Your guy get hurt, he goes down. I mean, it's just a lot of examples of teams that were good that you can look at and say, hey, if this guy hadn't gone down, they wouldn't get it. But bringing in these quarterbacks and these 1 and 2s on the depth chart, I think bode well for the whole season. Now, there's a quarterback that Lane College bought in from Cali. Okay, this is the year of the Cali quarterbacks, and a lot of Cali talent is on these rosters. Will it translate at Lane? Right? I don't know. Every time I say something about Lane, the Lane coaches, they right. You know, the Lane they are believers in themselves. I will say that down there at Lane. But my problem is they so inexperienced on that offensive line. You talking about true freshman after true freshman after true freshman on the offensive line for Lane. I mean, that's tough going. The same thing I find with that Miles. Like, they're just so young on the offensive line that I don't know if that quarterback is going to be as impactful as if they had a really experienced or some guys that have played a lot of snaps, right? Now, I'm with you, Flicks. I personally have Lane not winning the game this year, right? That's just I had him at the bottom. Lane is my bottom. Let's go back to Jamie's and Sly for where they have Lanes. Okay, Jamie got Lane 12. Sly got Lane at 13. I'm surprised he don't have Morehouse at 13. So let's give Sly a hand, because normally that man talks about Morehouse real bad. And if I was Drew and Morehouse, I would never let Sly step foot in Morehouse, because that man dogs Morehouse. But you know, hey, Morehouse with Miles Scott, I mean, he's not bad, right? He's not bad. It's just kind of, what do they have around him? This is Morehouse's first time. This is Morehouse's first time having a second-year coach in 4 or 5 seasons, right? The turnover there. So, hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Morehouse. Talk about Noah. Now, that Benedict situation, I made a post early on in the year about Darius Ocean going to Benedict. I think Jamie brought up last night that he wasn't, listed on the roster. I think there's still some issues. I reached out to a couple of people, and we may still see him at some point in the season, right? And but I think Benedict is fine. All right. I think Benedict offensively is still fine. They got the wide receiver Corey Petty that was at Tuskegee that left for Georgia Southern. I hate you. No, they don't have Corey Petty. Albany State has Corey Pitt. It was another transfer that Benedict bought in at offense on that wide receiver room that's escaping my mind right now. But, hey, we'll really see what Benedict can do. But I think if Darius Ocean is on that Benedict team, Benedict has a shot. Let's see. Jamie has Benedict 7. Sly has Benedict 5. So I put Savannah State at 3, right? I'm gonna put Benedict at 4. I think Benedict is 4. I'm gonna go with conventional wisdom and leave Albany State at 1. I have a question mark at 2, so I'm not gonna place 2 yet. 3, I'm gonna go Savannah State. 4, I'm gonna go Benedict. Yeah, that's yeah. I'm gonna go for Benedict. I'm wrestling with 2, and the reason why I'm wrestling with 2, I'm wrestling Clark Atlanta. I'm wrestling with Clark Atlanta at 2. I can't lie. I don't know. I don't know. In Teddy Keaton, I trust. That one is a rough one too, because the fan in me wants to put Tuskegee at 2. I can't lie. The fan in me I just cannot not believe in my Tigers now, because it's a lot of pressure on these coaches this year. Whether it's just internet talk, fan talk, alumni talk, it's a lot of pressure on these coaches. It's a lot of coaches that got to win this year. I think Kelton, he got to have a good showing at Savannah State. James, he has to have a good showing at Tuskegee this year. 5 and 6 will not cut it at Tuskegee. It just won't. I think he got to get to 8 games. I think James has to get to 8 games, and a rough schedule to start off, which we'll look at some of these schedules, but I don't know. So I'm gonna leave 2 blank, right? Savannah State, yeah, I got Savannah State 3. I got Benedict 4, 5. I'm finna shock a lot of people here. 5. I'm gonna go Kentucky State at 5. I'm gonna go Kentucky State at 5. When you look at these roster makeup, now whether these guys come in and they gel and they translate, that remains to be seen, right? We won't know that. But I'm gonna put Kentucky State at 5, just because I feel like they really found their footing last season. They got Jordan Hill coming back. They got a lot coming back on the defensive line. The offensive line for them, they're big, right? I felt like last season, Denham, he's a pretty short guy. Some of the things that they were running, and to me, I have this affinity for Coach Huggins. He's a coach that I've said on multiple shows that he shouldn't be on the hot seat. I feel like he shouldn't be on the hot seat simply because Kentucky State blew their own program up. When Charlie Jackson came into Kentucky State, he took them from a 0-10 team to a 7-3 team, knock off 2 Division I FCS teams and Robert Morris and Jackson State in that year, running the ball. And then you blow it up for a guy that has a totally different philosophy. And I think if you make that kind of decision, then you got to live with the consequences of him figuring it out. And last season, towards the end of the season, you saw Kentucky State figure it out. Luckily, Kentucky State gives us one of the GSC wins last year, even though Shorter is no longer in the GSC. I think they're in the Conference Carolinas now, but they were able to beat Shorter, a game that the old Kentucky State just would not have won. But erase how they started off the season, right? They started off the season with juggernauts. They start off the season with Virginia Union. Virginia Union dismantled Kentucky State. Then they went down to Alabama A&M, got their little check, got a good butt whooping, they little $50,000 check or whatever it was, went on back to Frankfurt. Then, if I'm not mistaken, they played Fort Valley, which is, when you look at Fort Valley is just one of those teams that, in my opinion, they underachieved because they did not finish the game, which goes back to my other point about having these two quarterbacks in the room. Fort Valley should have been in the championship game, in my opinion, with the talent that they had and the teams that they had a few years in a row. Like this little 3-4 year run for Fort Valley, they don't make it to the championship game. I will say that the divisions hurt them. Divisions hurt them that first year, so that's 2022. Division hurt them that year because I feel like they were the second best team in the conference. But when they met Benedict, you had a banged up Kelvin Durham. Didn't have another guy that could come in and really play. Last year, same thing. If Kelvin Durham gets banged up, who is the second guy to come in? Now, this particular season, while we're talking about Fort Valley, I don't know. Now, they coach. I looked at their fan day, and I feel like they're going to get somebody. I don't know who they're going to get. Okay, I hope when they come to Tuskegee, it's not us that they're going to get. I feel like they're going to get somebody because they're still the bones of that team. I won't say the bones of that team. There are some nails left over from that Fort Valley talent hub that's still at Fort Valley. And I think those guys are going to be grimy. So you kind of see that, right? Look at Miles in that first year that Ruffin left. When they came to Tuskegee, they really grinded it out. Almost got a win. Where we went in double, triple overtime with them. Look at Allen last year against Clark Atlanta. They were right there. Had a chance to really, really knock Keaton off like those guys. So I think that Fort Valley team, they're going to get somebody because those guys are going to be highly motivated. But I don't think that this is their year. I think they got to get some things figured out. Now, their coach, to his point, he said he's going to win. He was like, nobody knows what they've been through. I can only imagine. I've heard some of the stories, and Fort Valley is one of those schools that I had this affinity for too. Like I personally love Fort Valley, and I have fond memories of going to Fort Valley as a child and just the experiences there. And I think it's a great institution, and the connection there with Tuskegee and Fort Valley is unmatched. My guy Randall went to a graduate of Fort Valley that runs the HBCU Plus and Clutch Points. So I like Fort Valley. Looking in hindsight, I do feel like they underachieved, but I think half their underachievement comes to that they just didn't have that second guy at quarterback. Now, to that point, Coach Ray, that was at Fort Valley, he's now the OC at Miles, and then OC, who was the defensive line coach, is now the DC at Tuskegee. So the branches of Fort Valley they're kind of wide, but the sheer talent that Fort Valley had, man, is unmatched. You can't deny the talent that Fort Valley has had. And look at where those guys went. A lot of those guys are going Division I. I would argue that Fort Valley had more guys to go Division I than Miles had to go Division I with Shade, right? Not all those guys went with Shade. Some of those guys are like LaShawn Young, who led them in interceptions. He's at Sanford. So those guys went a lot of places, but none tops the places that the Fort Valley talent went to. So, but in all, I got them finishing around. I got them at 11. Jamie have them at 10. They'll get somebody. I got Lane at 13. Just out of love for Fort Valley. I'm gonna put them at 10 too, just because they're gonna get somebody, and it will not surprise me if Fort Valley does not show up in the Fountain City Classic and knock off Albany State and stop them from going to the championship game. That's it. It wouldn't be any other way to be Fort Valley than to, at the end, come alive and knock off Fort Valley. Just please, when y'all come to Tuskegee, please don't come alive at that game. Please, just whatever you do, don't come to Tuskegee with that foolishness. So, on my quarterback list, I don't know. Like, there's the Hurst kids, there's the Tadiq Seal kid at Fort Valley. I think that'd be all right. Yeah, so that's Fort Valley. So I got Fort Valley at 10. So right now, we got Albany State 1, question mark at 2, Savannah State 3, Kentucky State 4, no, Benedict 4, Kentucky State 5. Now 6. Can I tie 6? My show, I can tie 6, right? Tie 6. I'm going to tie Allen and Edward Waters. I'm going to tie Allen and Edward Waters. And if you go and look at Edward Waters, well, let me say this. Coach Morgan led Edward Waters through their transition. Hats off to him. Had a heck of a year. He turned around and beat the 2 blue bloods in this conference. He turned around, he beat Albany State, and he beat Tuskegee in back-to-back weekends, right? Last play, really exciting game. Edward Waters is putting a lot of resources into their football program. They having to change their AD now. So they got two people they're going to be co-athletic directors, if I read that right. And one of them is Derek Burrows, who was the AD / he was the AD at Lane College, and at one time he was the head coach at Lane College. So he's over at Edward Waters now. Yeah, you know. We'll see. Everybody deserves an opportunity. I remember him vividly from that response after one media day. He was like, you know what? I get mad as hell when I come here because they always pick us to finish last, and we never finish last. And he's absolutely right. They never would finish last because Lane College would get somebody. So, yeah, man. Edward Waters, and here's the thing about Brian Jenkins. You look at some of the stuff that Brian Jenkins runs offensively, and you look at it and say, hey, this is really good. He's a championship caliber coach. He is a championship caliber coach. Now, Brian Jenkins is, let me say this again, he's a championship caliber coach. I also believe that fit is really important. When he goes to Alabama State, I'm not really sure Alabama State was the fit for him. I'm just not sure of that. I'm not sure if sometimes you can just go the wrong place. So he's back in Florida. He's been on that staff a long time. But I think teams take on the demeanor of their coach. And I think for Edward Waters' team, this change so late is not really detrimental to their season. It might be the fire that they needed to get over the hump. You have a motivated coach, right? Because if he does a poor job, he knows that Faison is going to go hire another coach. So if it's him, you got to say this is his opportunity. This is Brian Jenkins' opportunity to get back what we know he once was. So what can relaunch his career? Winning at Edward Waters. I think you go and watch the interviews. Like, there's a lot of interviews out there. Go watch them. Guy says they're going to win. I think he's an intense guy. I think he's on that more that disciplinarian type of coach. And I think that Edward Waters is going to come out with an edge. Have one of the easier, on paper, right? Before you get into rosters, you can say Edward Waters has one of the easier schedules. I'm not so sure now that I see the rosters. I'm not so sure, but just off preseason paper, we can say Edward Waters has one of the easier schedules to get there. They start off right out the gate. Savannah State, Edward Waters, two schools that have historically started off slow and then pick up as the season goes along. Somebody has to start off strong. Now, on the D2 show last night with Steven and Ferg, the two games that they kind of glossed over was the Central State, Kentucky State game and the Savannah State, Edward Waters game. But those games have really big implications because of how the schedules fall this year. Kentucky State and Central State is a really big game because whoever wins that game, that tells me a lot. Whoever wins this Savannah State Edward Waters game, it means a lot. I told you, I've bought stock in Savannah State. They can't afford to drop this first game. You cannot drop Edward Waters because if you lose Edward Waters, name a better defense. If Edward Waters' offense can get going against Savannah State's defense, name a defense that Edward Waters is going to face that's going to be as talented as Savannah State's. So it's just that's a big game. That is, in my opinion, that is a championship. By default, it's a game. It's a championship level game. But looking at the rosters, man, I really think that's a championship level game. So we will see. We will see. I think that's a big time game, and all eyes in the SIAC should be on it, even more so than some of these out of conference games. I mean, we want to win out of conference games, but we got a good mix, right, of out of conference game and in conference game that mean a whole lot. Yeah. So I'm going to tie. I'm going to tie Edward Waters and Allen. I'm going to tie Edward Waters and Allen. And I'm going to be honest with you. Depth might be the issue at Allen, but talent is not the issue. Talent is not the issue. Go flip on the tape of some of them guys that's up there at Allen. I mean, you're talking about motivated coaches. These rosters resemble motivated coaches. I think it was Coach Hayes that posted that D2 is now the new D1. And it's because there's this guys, this transfer portal has allowed these coaches that if you go through it the right way, you can put you a team together. You can put you a team together. And I ain't talking about these FBS drop downs. I'm talking about these guys. Look at the guys that a lot of schools picked up from Limestone. I mean, you're talking about you in certain places where you can go get some guys who've played some snap, some experienced players for you. Does it always work? No, but we've seen it work. You know, people talk about the offensive line, about you got to develop offensive line. I think it's a philosophy. Look at Benedict. Look what Benedict did. This second year come in with all those grad transfers on the offensive line. And what did they do to the conference? He took those guys with him to the MEAC. What did they do in the MEAC? They went to the Celebration Bowl in their first year. This is a new age. I know a lot of us are stuck in the 2000s. It ain't the 99s and 2000s. This is a different game. This is a different game. This is a different philosophy. Does the old way work? Yes, it can still work in spaces. It can work. Sam Shade. It's the contrast, right? So we've seen success at all these positions. We've seen success. We have seen teams be successful doing it. I think you just have to do it well your way. You have to do it your way. So whatever your philosophy is, believe in it. Believe in it. I heard Coach Mickey Joseph on the SWAT call this week. One of the reporters asked him about, when you came, you said you wanted to build your team off high school talent. And he was like, yeah, but we reevaluated. I think there's some of us in the space that we get in some of these coaches' ears and, I think they listen, and I think sometimes they listen too much. Go with your gut. Go with your gut. I mean, a team full of plug and play guys at Lane knocked off Tennessee State. They didn't have the depth to make a full run of a season, but a 5-5 season at Lane, to me, that's equivalent to winning 9 or 10 games at an Albany State or a Tuskegee. If you get 5-5 at Lane, because success looks different in different places. You can get it done. It's just your philosophy, and you have to be rooted in your philosophy, because I've seen the conference change. I've seen the teams change, right? What's your, not only that, and will these schools give you the grace, right? And so I think that was kind of the scary thing with Albany State when they got Coach Gray. He came in, passed, throwing the ball all around after basically having Gabe believe running, Mike White believe in running the ball. And the Mike White way, it won a lot of games. Gabe won a lot of games. Got him a SIAC championship. Now you got Coach Gray. Coach Gray has won a significant amount of games, himself. And I think this year is to really, I think this is his year to say, I can win this way. He cannot take a step back. Coach Gray cannot take a step back at Albany State doing it this way, because there are certain schools, and I'll go forward and say this, and I might get a couple phone calls from some coaches when I say this. There are certain schools that will allow you to tinker with their identity. Right? But the Blue Bloods, you can't really tinker with their identity like that. Teddy Keaton going to a Clark Atlanta and throwing the ball all around. I mean, what do they know? When the last time they saw winning football? When the last time the fan base at Clark Atlanta saw winning football? So it works when you get to a place like that. So Teddy Keaton can come in and get some guys and plug and play some guys and go, like he's going to plug and play Zy McDonald. He's going to plug and play some guys at the linebacker position. You can do that at a Clark Atlanta. It's kind of difficult to do at Albany State, but Gray has taken on that challenge, so we'll see. Like I said, Kentucky State, they tried it. They had a coach that had proven you can win the ball running the ball. They ain't going to get a coach that want to throw the ball. I think that'll be a little bit more balanced this season. But there. And that brings me to this Central State. I'm also buying the Central State stock. I see Sly has them at 12. Jamie has them at 13. I'm going to slide them right in there at 7. Sly, I agree. Their media team does a lot of work. But I'm all for certain programs needing that fresh wind. And this is no knock on Kevin Porter. I think Kevin Porter, his defenses, they were good. I think probably one thing that me and Randall don't really agree on about Kevin Porter is his time at Fort Valley. I scratched my head when Central State hired him because I looked at the job he did at Fort Valley and I just wasn't really sure. right? Now, I know there's some context things, some nuance thing, like the amount of scholarships, and there's some things that you got to go into that, right? So don't clip this up. Don't get mad with me, Coach Porter, when I say this. There was a revolving door of quarterbacks at Fort Valley. When you got to Central State, there was a revolving door of quarterbacks. So it was just one of those things I just felt like, it's just the same. It became the same thing, the same concepts when he got there. Also, I felt like Ohio is rich with talent. When you looked at Porter's roster, you were going to get these guys, like when they went and got the kid from 8 Mile, I was just like, why are you down here? I consistently tell this story. The same year Tuskegee came and whooped 2 FCS schools, right? We whooped 2 FCS schools. We went up to Findlay, Ohio, played a team in a rundown YMCA stadium called Findlay. They had nobody but kids from Ohio, and I think they beat us 62-7 or 67-3. Whatever the score was, they beat us so bad that I don't remember, and I don't think that we let them stay on the schedule next year because I felt like we had a home-and-home series again, and we're just like, no, we're not doing that. And they beat us with Ohio talent. You can take that same Tifton Division II team and drop them in the SIAC. They're going to be a championship contender, and they're doing it with Ohio talent. You go back to the Billy Joe era at Central State. Central State has a pedigree. They have an Ohio pedigree. They have been a national runner-up in Division II playoffs. I know we always say Winston State the only one. No, Central State made it to the Division II national championship game. Did not win, but they made it. I think they made the playoffs as like a 10-year run where they made the playoffs like 4 years in a row, and then the year after they dropped out of Division II. And then they had success on the NAIA level. Central State has a pedigree. Now, they don't have a pedigree in the SIAC because since they've been on SIAC, they have struggled and strained. When the job came open, there were a lot of familiar names circling around for that job. And I talked to God. Now, I'm telling you, I talked to God and I told God, now, if Central State want to win, they better not retread these guys. And I took a lot of heat. I mean, there's some folks, they want to jump on me for some of my opinions about that Central State team, but I didn't give a damn, to be honest with you. Central State needed a fresh wind. They needed fresh blood. I think this is good. It's high risk, it's high reward. I know there's the people that talk about, oh, we got to continue, we got to, and people put in, I don't care, okay? I do not care. Central State has tried the retreads. They have not worked. So try something different. People said the same thing when Tuskegee hired Willie Slater. This guy never coached in the HBCU ranks. This guy, then he came in and smacked all these Negroes in their mouth. He's never been a head coach before. Smack these Negroes in their mouth. The first SIAC team to win a championship, win Division II playoff game in quite some time, right? Sometimes Albany State would make it to the second round by default because they would get a first round bye. And no knock to Mike White. Mike White was great. I think Mike White, that 2004 team, probably the best team in the SIAC history, rivaled only by this newly Benedict team. Probably that 23 Benedict team. I think that's probably the only team that rivals that 2004 Albany State team. That 2004 Albany State team they were unbeatable. They beat the national championship in the national champion in Valdosta State. They beat them, and then they had to play them again. And we all know the saying, say it's hard to beat a team twice, especially a national champion caliber team. And it wasn't like a blowout. So that Albany State team, had they not drawn Valdosta State, in that first round, I think Albany State could have been a national runner-up. They could have been a national runner-up. That team was stacked. That 2004 Albany State team. Now, Central State, what do they have? I know Sly and Jamie, they talked about it last night. They talked about it on the other D2 show. They talked about Mike White. They got Dominique Davis coming back. He was kind of banged up last year. He came down from Lenore Ryan. With him and Jalea Lenore, man, they were a hell of a combination. But they still return a lot at Central State. I think offensively they'll be better. We'll see. I think they will go as far as that quarterback room will go. They have some guys play a lot of snaps, but then they bought in the transfer, a Cali guy, the Campbell guy. I don't know much about him. I looked at a little film on him, flicks, which if you want to know quarterback breakdown, check out Kelly Flicks, man. He's good on that. He has a real eye on the Cali people because that's where he's from. So I think he's loving that all these Cali quarterbacks are now in the conference. The year of the Cali quarterbacks. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, look at them last year. The most dominant team. Okay, so let's throw out these ideas, right? So even when you look at the statistics, and I'm going to end the show with this. This is just the first show, just getting our feet wet. So I enjoy it. We're going to start this morning show a little more often. But if you look at that Central State team, Central State was the only team outside of Albany State that competed with Miles to get him, that could have beaten Miles. The defense for Central State was strong last year. Their offense was just atrocious. And I'm going to say that. The offense was atrocious last year for Central State. Just bad. There's no other way to put it. Defensively, they were there. The statistics, we like to quote them a lot, but it gets in the way because it depends on your schedule because there are 13 teams in the SIAC. And all 13 of these teams, they do something totally different. It's not a lot of balanced teams in this conference. Either team is a passer. Look at Clark Atlanta, the passer. So if you have a draw to schedule where you have all of the top passing teams, yeah, it's going to show your rushing defense high, but then you got to go and break that schedule down. You got to dig a little bit deeper into these schedules to say, okay, well, cool, that's not what it is. Central State got a bad, they got a bad draw. They got a bad draw last year. They had Albany State and Miles. But look at how they competed against Miles. I think it was like a 16-14 game. The fact that their offense showed up, well, their defense scored one, but the fact that they were able to contain that run threat that Miles had, because Miles wasn't anything special on offense last year, not for real, but they just were a holistic team. But the fact that Central State was just in there, they found a way to get over the team that I bought all the stock in, Savannah State. They beat them first game of the year. Now, Savannah State don't have this kind of foolishness this year. Don't do that because I've bought stock in y'all. Don't do that. So Central State, I don't have them finishing at the bottom. They're gonna get some guys. They're gonna get some people. And I'm gonna say right off the rip who I think they're gonna get. Tuskegee faithful, don't run me out of Tuskegee when I say this. I just think there is a lot on Tuskegee's plate these first three games. You start off with Winston-Salem in the Red Tails Classic. So Winston-Salem, being honest, is a team that we have not shown dominance over because probably at one point we were the two most dominant Division II HBCU programs out there. We met in 2013 and Winston-Salem ran off with it. Okay, so I'm not being biased here. 2013, the Rams, Tuskegee was supposed to be good. I think both teams came in that game ranked. Tuskegee scored off that first play from scrimmage. Didn't show up anymore. Winston-Salem ran off with the game. Okay. Then, of course, Maynard leaves. There's Boulware. We play them again. We get in this home and home series with them. We play them up there. They beat us. And then that next year, we beat them. But then when we play them because we played them in 2015. So we beat them in 2015. Then there's the break. I want to say it's the 2018, 2019 year. They came back to Tuskegee, which they had not won a game. They were 0-4, 0-3, something like that. And I'll never forget, Ferg was like, I feel he woke up that Saturday morning when Ferg does these like Saturday morning field posts. Ferg woke up that morning. He said, I feel like Winston-Salem going to get their first win today. I remember reading that and saying, ain't no way in hell Winston-Salem is going to come down here and get their first win today. Have you lost your mind? And what did Winston-Salem do? Came down and whooped our ASS. They came down and whooped us. So I own that. I think the series might be tied. What it might be 4-4? I think it might be 4-4. Steven said we never got our game back. You absolutely right, Steve. We weren't giving y'all a game back. We were sick of y'all. We were sick of y'all. And I remember reading in one of the past publications, the website that we used to all go on and read and talk. I remember I think we 4-4. I think you cheating us. Who got the 4 wins, Steven? I thought we were 4-4, Steven. But you might be right. But give us the 4 if we got the 4. But whatever the case, Winston-Salem is a quality Division II program, right? It is what it is. There's a contrast, right? There's a contrast because there is a contrast in players because we don't really recruit the same type of guys like the region in which Winston-Salem recruit, and their restraints around their state. You know, they kind of stay in that North Carolina area, and Tuskegee, you know, we're in this Alabama, we kind of south, we get a lot of kids from Florida. So it is a mesh, right, of two programs that I feel like are evenly matched. Both, I know Stephen and them talked about yesterday that it was championship or bust. Their coach said it, not my words. Their coach said it. And I would say it's pretty much championship or bust at Tuskegee. So you have two coaches that are in my opinion, must-win situations. So that's going to be a game. I ain't talk much trash about it because I don't know. Tuskegee is just, we will see, right? We will see what happens Saturday. I think they will be two historic programs. I do think this might be the most, think this might be the best attendance wise. Don't get me, I mean, Fort Valley traveled, so don't get me wrong. But I know Winston-Salem does travel well. I know they coach said it'll feel like a home. It's not gonna feel like home in Montgomery now. Now your coach took it too far. You took it a little too far, Coach Massey. It's not gonna feel like it's home. Okay. Let's not do that. Now we don't disrespect us in that way. Now I feel like Coach Dishman at Texas Southern with hey, pump your brakes now. Let's not do that. Montgomery is the second home for Tuskegee. We won a lot of ball games in Crampton Bowl. Lately, we've lost a lot of games in Crampton Bowl, but I'm looking for a really big game, and I think it's going to be good, right? I think it's going to be good for TV. It's on TV. I think this will be a good showing for Division II football. So I'm looking for an entertaining game. As much as I love Tuskegee and I want Tuskegee to just beat everybody down, I want both teams to put their best product on the field. I want both teams to do that. That's my honest opinion. I think it will bode well for our sports and both of our conferences if there's a good showing by both programs. Now, fast forward the next week. We have Central State in our first night game, which has been in the making since 1926 because Coach Cleve Abbott wrote an article when he was pleading about money after they completed the bowl in 1925, which our stadium turns 100 years old this year. He wanted lights, and he made a full-out cry and plea. Now, a lot of people have ran with that story. Give people credit for that story because people didn't know that story until I went and brought that story up. I'm going to pat my own self on the back. That story was hidden because a lot of people do not go back and read a lot of the papers, and that was in one of Cleve Abbott's papers and the speeches that he would go around and do at the local churches. So give me my credit for that. But 1926, so 99 years in the making of wanting likes. Tuskegee finally has likes. All right, cool. It's a lot, right? So you get a Central State team that, what do we know about Central State? Not much. They'll play Kentucky State. I told y'all I'm high on Kentucky State, right? I got Kentucky State up there. I think Kentucky State will be ready. Me thinking about Central State does not determine on how I feel about this game. With Winston-Salem, your first game, the third game is Jackson State for Tuskegee. That middle game is Central State. And I'm going to leave off on this cliffhanger for this episode. I think Central State is going to beat us for our first night game. I think I got this feeling, man. It's a feeling that I've had. Sometimes I told y'all I will go with my gut. Now, a lot of times I get on these shows just for clicks and giggles and put me on a summer jam. I'll say stuff just to excite the people. I don't care. And then the people in the chat that run the SIAC-Talk with me, they know I'll tell them, yeah, I ain't feel like that. But I'm going to be honest. My honest belief is that Central State is going to come down and beat us on that first night game. I don't know why. I just feel it. Do I hope they beat us? Hell no. Hell no. Hell no, I don't want them to beat us. Will I be sad? Yes. I'm going to get on this show and tell y'all how sad I am, how disappointed I am. I might join I won't say that yet. I'll say that for another episode. But this has been your first episode of SIAC-Talk in the middle of the day, morning, whatever you want to call it. Peace out to the next show.